Hello and welcome to The Queer Gaze, a gay movie podcast dedicated to examining queer representation and issues.
We're into our third entry in the sports gaze theme with American football movie Riley. If you want to hear more of the discussion, including our Chili Pepper Award, please support The Queer Gaze at patreon.com/thequeergaze.
You'll also get early access to regular main feed episodes and extra content for every single episode.
And you can follow us on social media at The Queer Gaze.
Well, hello there, Joe. Are you ready to do some North American sports for a change?
Oh, yes. Fuck that rugby shit, because we are talking about good old American football.
A real man's game.
Oh my God. Well, we'll debate that, won't we? Because can you be a real man and play American-style football?
Well, indeed. Especially if you love people that you're not supposed to love.
Yes. Why do we sound so sarcastic? It's like, these are legitimate questions that the film is interrogating, so.
They are indeed, yes.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be so snarky. So what is the film?
Okay, so we are talking about Riley from 2023. It is written and directed by Benjamin Howard. It is something of an autobiography. Tell me, Conrad, does this sound familiar?
It does, very much so.
I think it takes a certain type of person to make a sports gay kind of movie, right?
Yeah, somebody who's deeply invested in it.
There we go. Okay, so this movie follows Dakota Riley, who is played by Jake Hawley, and he is a high school student who is actively being scouted by several colleges for a promising football career. But as he attempts to maintain a public-facing relationship with his beard, Skylar, who is played by Riley Quinn Scott, Dakota may be developing feelings for his best friend Jaden, who is played by Colin McCullough. And part of this is helped by the fact that Jaden actually lives with him after being kicked out of his own house for question mark reasons. So when Dakota's French partner, who is out gay student Liam, played by Connor Story, catches the football stud looking at ripped torsos on social media, Dakota begins to spiral, engaging in semi-destructive behavior as he tries to reconcile his irrefutable desires with the person he has told himself that he has to be. Drama ensues.
Of course it does.
Yeah. Not helped by the fact that his dad is actually also the coach. So his father, Carson, is played by Rib Hillis, and he has big expectations of what his son will do that he was, of course, unable to do himself because of a career-ending injury.
You've always got to have a career-ending injury in these movies.
I mean, as opposed to, oh, you know what? I realize that I'm not going to be able to play football forever, so I should probably try to think about the next stage of my life.
No, it's got to be no fault of their own. He was not mediocre.
Right.
He was destined for greatness. It was just his weak ankles or whatever.
Yeah. I would like to see a sports movie with somebody who is like decent, but it's not going to be the thing that gets them there. But maybe that's just not as compelling. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's Rudy. I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is our third entry into kind of like obviously we're talking about sports gays and we will continue this, but we're going to change sports after this particular discussion. But this is a slightly different version than the conversations we had about rugby. So I'm curious, what did you think about Riley as a movie?
I found it a really curious experience.
Okay.
Because there seemed to be two very different eras at play in what I thought was a modern society, social setting.
Right.
And especially geographical as well, because this is Southern California, isn't it? It's not the Rust Belt or like a traditionally conservative or religious area of the US.
That is a good question. I think I saw on the Wikipedia page that it was filmed in California, but I don't know if it's meant to be set there.
Well, I think it mirrors the writer-director's growing up. So I think it is where he grew up.
Yes, it says East County, San Diego, but that's where the filming took place. And I don't know that they ever actually name where it's supposed to be, do they?
No, I don't think they do.
Okay.
You're right. I found it curious because on the one hand, it appears to be something that, again, you would expect in the 90s. And we've talked about this before, that these films that are autobiographical by a director who, has 20 years after his formative experiences is finally in a position to make a movie, but then it feels weirdly anachronistic because the social values and the drama that they're coming up against feels like something from 20 years ago.
Right.
And the director is quite young, and this feels very contemporary, but at the same time you have this very masculine sports environment where there are F slurs being thrown around all of the time, where students are being mocked and picked on, where there is a genuine fear or horror or repugnance at the idea of being queer in any way whatsoever, and it being anathema to being in the team or a successful athlete.
Yep.
Which feels really antiquated.
Mm-hmm.
And yet at the same time there are out queer people in the school who feel very empowered because, for example, when one of Riley's teammates F-slurs this person within earshot, they just walk right up to them and confront them about it. And the sense is that there really is no place for this person to go because what they've done is inexcusable. So there is this weird dichotomy going on of this very, very conservative masculine environment up against what feels to be like quite a progressive modern environment. And perhaps that is an accurate reflection of where we are in high school. But I wouldn't have imagined that in California.
Yeah, this was an interesting experience because, I made a slight joke when I was doing my overview of the plot where I called Skylar a beard. The reality is that Skylar actually has a fairly significant part in the film. And if you read interviews with the director, he says he wanted to make sure that this wasn't just the throwaway character that, the closeted queer boy uses and then throws away as part of his process of discovery, because we've also had that conversation. But it seems like from Skylar's point of view, like she's really good friends with Liam and this other queer boy. And you get the impression that if you're outside of this contained world of football, then it is very progressive and very open-minded and nobody has an issue with it. But if you're part of that team dynamic, if you're in the locker room, if you're among the boys, then all of a sudden it's like, well, we might as well be 1950s. It's all about like scoring with chicks and doing stuff that's no homo. And you're just like, oh, wow, I guess I can understand why Dakota has such a struggle with this, because he's really living in these two worlds where he wants to be progressive and thoughtful and considerate, but then he also has to still continue to engage with these boys who are frankly disgusting.
Yeah. Which is, I don't know, really, really strange and not what I was anticipating at all. And also I get the strong sense that the main character is not very aware of his sexuality. And it seems a bit late, really.
Yeah, I think that this is actually, to me, the most interesting question, or the thesis that the film is exploring that I have the most interest in, which is this idea that here is a boy who's like clearly 18. He's about to go off and start his life at college where presumably he will have more freedom. He'll be out from under his father's thumb and nose and so on. So he'll be able to explore who he wants to become as an individual. But for now, he very much has to play the game, right? Like you have to present as football superstar, but also no homo. But like throughout the film, you get the sense that Dakota is actively fighting against the thing he already knows to be true. So like he's frequently on his phone, on social media, looking at, frankly, more gay shit than I look at now as an out gay man. I'm just like, I get it. You are hungry for dick right now. And part of the problem is that he's not getting it. So all he can do is sort of fantasize for it. But he clearly seems to know that he is attracted to men. and less so women. Like, there's repeated scenes of Skylar trying to give him blowjobs or hand jobs, and it's just not working because he's not turned on. And then there's all these other moments where he's like, but I can't be gay because that doesn't fit with the narrative that I have constructed for who I'm going to be. And I think that's where the film is the most interesting, is where he knows that he's gay, but can't say the word gay and never will say it. Even when he says, like, at the end of the film, this big revelatory moment with Skylar, he just says, I'm not straight.
Yeah. The deathless
and I think you had an issue with that, didn't you?
I did. I thought, oh, for goodness sake. I mean, really?
Are we back to not labeling things, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, I was also a little bit annoyed with it being presented as a binary in this film, which again feels like quite a regressive attitude. So the character of Liam, who, because of Connor Story's performance, is one of the most interesting characters.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But he's also presented in a way that I would expect to see when it's shot through with a very conservative perspective, which is that he's a predatory queer who's going to turn your football team gay. And,
or at least out you, yeah.
Or at least out you, yeah, the first opportunity. Yeah, he just sort of, he comes straight at him after just seeing his TikTok feed, which, you know, fair enough. It's pretty obvious, but at the same time, he's making quite a huge assumption by saying, does Skylar know?
Yeah.
Does Skylar know what? That he's possibly bi?
Yeah.
It could be anything. Why are you assuming he is one of two extremes?
Yeah, we've seen this character, and I'm glad that you said predatory, because I do think that that is definitely part of it. Like, in some ways, Liam capitalizes on Dakota's closetedness for whatever or however Dakota identifies, which I think he himself doesn't actually want to address or know. But Liam just makes this really assumptive leap into saying, oh, well, you're looking at dudes, which must mean I can put the moves on you. I can give you a blowjob when you're supposed to be over here working on this French project with me. And then it's not quite blackmail. Like, it's not Love Simon territory where this person is saying, like, I'm actively looking to profit from the fact that you don't want a secret to come out. But it is very much like, no, you know you like dick, so why won't you just admit it to yourself and tell Skylar, because I don't want to see her get hurt. So I think for Liam, it's that the answer is so obvious, because for Liam, it was like, this is who I am, and I don't have a problem with it. And he doesn't understand that Dakota might actually be struggling with it.
Yeah. But I do think it's a little bit of an odd characterization for that character. I don't fully buy it. But again, it's interesting to see if it is a negative representation of a queer character, then I'm not against that. You know, there are horrendous people everywhere.
We both know some terrible queer people. And here's the thing. That's what makes queer people regular people, because some are good and some are bad and some are in the middle. So it's almost like we're like straight people in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, weird. But the other thing I want to talk about is consent.
Oh, okay.
Because there was talk in interviews that I watched with the director where people were praising him for his depiction of consent and the fact that there are several scenes in which it's made clear that both parties are consenting to sexual activity with each other. And I thought,
right. There's a lot of checking in, but there's also a lot of stuff where it's like, I'm not really asking. Like, I'm kissing you and then saying, is this okay? But it's like, well, you already did the kiss, so...
It's a bit late, yeah. I'm sucking your cock and you didn't stop me. You didn't stop me is not consent, people.
I did think that was a very curious way to frame that sexual interaction. It's like, I think we've probably both been in situations where things are happening and maybe one person wants it more than the other person, or someone maybe is inebriated or just something like that, where, like, yeah, issues of consent can become murky. But also, I don't then retroactively be like, well, you didn't stop, so that means you definitely wanted it. Or that I can just default make a bunch of other assumptions about you.
Yeah, which is clearly not the case. So
Mm-hmm.
I was not so sure. Although, in fact, it may be that the film is engaging with the question of consent in a nuanced way, and therefore it isn't sort of modelling perfect consensual behaviour and checking in. So I don't know. There was a lot of my hand's already there. Are you going to deal with that, or is that a problem?
Yeah. Or like both people clearly do want it. So the fact that a hand is already in someone's crotch and then is this okay? And, like, I think at one point Dakota begins to finger Skylar in the hot tub and he goes, is this okay? And she's like, yeah, just keep going. Just like, I'm so fucking horned up. Can you just stop asking me questions and probe a little deeper kind of thing?
Yeah, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. I want to talk about a curious narrative format because I think my biggest issue with the film is this is funny. A character called Obi-Wan Hookup, who is played by J.B. Waterman. So throughout the course of the film, it basically takes place over a fairly short duration, but intercut throughout, there are scenes of Dakota hooking up with this older gentleman that he's clearly met on the apps. He's shown up at this guy's house. There's a hookup. And I thought for about 3/4 of the film that this was a repeated interaction, like he was going back to this guy's house for a number of hookups. And this is a older man, as I said, who has a partner. They're open. Partner is not there, but he knows that Dakota is coming over. And it's not until you get to the end of the movie that you realize, oh no, this is actually all happening. It's one sexual encounter, and they've just been having a variety of different kinds of conversations. And then it ends with this guy sort of instilling advice because obviously Dakota is very fucked up about his identity and his sexuality and so on. And I did not like this. I don't think it's clear. I don't think it's very well integrated into the rest of the film. I think narratively, it really takes me out of a lot of things that are happening. And I also just don't buy this character. Like, I'm sorry, this is a statutory rape situation with an older man going after, unless I'm mistaken and Dakota is actually already 18, but it's very clearly I'm extremely young. You are preying on someone that is very young and hot, but also inexperienced. We're talking about rough sex. We're talking about kissing or no kissing. We don't actually see anything, which I think is also an interesting creative decision, but to scatter this throughout the film feels odd because it feels like we're supposed to think that Dakota is learning things from each of these different conversation pieces, and then it helps to inform who he is at the end of the movie. But if it's all in one day or one morning or afternoon, I don't know. It did not work for me, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
No, it didn't work for me either. The main thing I couldn't figure out is, where does this happen in the narrative? Is it at the beginning? Is it at the end? Where does it happen?
So it has to be right at the end because one of the big things that happens is that he eventually gets punched in the face. Dakota gets punched in the face by Liam in his truck after most of the film has happened. And he has this big black eye that he goes to school with that day. And for the big game that, of course, the movie ends with, he ends up painting the other eye black so that no one can tell what's going on with him. And he skipped all of his classes. People are very worried. But when he goes to this hookup, he has the black eye. So we know that it has happened basically the day of this big game when he has missed a bunch of his classes. He's been hooking up with this guy. See,
I don't see why he would do that at that point, or why he would behave the way he does during that either. It doesn't make any sense. So I can shed some light on where it comes from.
Okay.
As you can probably imagine, this
was a real incident.
No, it's a short.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so this was the director's short, which was a proof of concept for him as a director who could do a feature on this topic. And because he was so taken with the short, they filmed it again and interspersed it throughout the whole narrative. And no, it doesn't work, unfortunately.
That is interesting. That is really interesting because I don't think that if you just take it in isolation as a short, I think it'd be fine. It'd play well. But also, I don't think of that as proof of what the rest of the film is actually trying to accomplish, which is much more interesting. To me, this feels very film festival from the late 90s, early 2000s, where it's like, what if I hooked up with a boy who doesn't really know what he is, and we had to have these kind of intimate, but also maybe a little sexy conversation.
Yeah, and it's typical short fodder as well. It's two people on one set. Yeah. And so you can easily see how it would have made for a compelling two-man drama.
And low budget,
And low budget, of course. And they have a narrative arc through the course of that scene. The thing is here is he split it into pieces and scattered it throughout the movie with an arc that doesn't comment upon, build upon, or even reflect the arc that's happening in the movie.
No. I felt like it wasn't needed. And ultimately, like, it gives you a kernel of helping Dakota figure some of his stuff out so that he can have some meaningful conversations with people like Skylar, where he says, I'm not straight. And he realizes, no, I can just go and be good in my football game and be one of the guys. And it doesn't have to mean anything more than that. But I think all of those elements could have still been achieved without these interspersed pieces that are recreations of the short. And to me, that's like, ooh, that's a problem. That means that they're not actually doing as much heavy lifting as you maybe thought.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with that. It's the one major stumbling block of the movie. Otherwise, I thought it was pretty solid and interesting drama. I mean, certainly giving me access to an environment that I had not necessarily experienced in any way in another film before. Mm-hmm. And the performances, I think, are really good. I mean, especially Jake Holley and Connor Story, I thought were very impressive.
Yeah. No, I think most of the rest of the film works. And I want to kind of dig into the performances and some of the sexy stuff when we hop over to Patreon. So I think overall, I would say this film is worth your time. I wasn't surprised to see that it played at BFI Flair, because I think it's the kind of contemporary queer film that can hit both of those benchmarks where you're like, it's doing a good job of telling a compelling story that's pretty relevant still, but also giving people hot guys and lingering torso shots.
Yes, but nothing too explicit, even though it is still steamy in a few places.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that said, why don't we tease it? And folks, if you want, you can join us over on Patreon. It's patreon.com/thequeergaze. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the sexy bits, some of the ridiculous bits, and other things. But if you do not want to pay the $3 to hear all of the bonus contents for every single episode that we have dropped, then we will see you back here in a couple of weeks. We're going to shift sports, Conrad. So we're going to talk about a Danish film about swimming called Jean, or Boys.
Oh, okay. So lots of torsos in that then.
And hopefully Speedos, but age-appropriate Speedos, yes.
Okay.